Yo, what's going on, brah? It's time for us to talk about the brand new Whitechapel album. Man, this is something that we've been waiting for a long time, ever since Our Endless War came out, which just fucking melted faces. Oh, wait, sorry. I really don't know who that was. What's going on? New Whitechapel album, entitled Mark of the Blade. We talked about the single whenever it came out. It was one that left mixed feelings and mixed emotions, to say the very least. Same could really be stated about Our Endless War, which was the last album that they released. So a lot of fans are looking for a little bit of a comeback album to kind of wash the taste of that previous disc out of their mouths. So what is there to say about Whitechapel, and what did we learn from the single, from the self-titled song off of Mark of the Blade? We learned that they were willing to take things a little bit simplistic. They definitely kept the heaviness quotient going, and it was one that maybe had some lyrics that were not exactly Wadsworth. But then again, who's really William Shakespeare these days? Anybody? Nobody, really. Okay, so let's move on and talk about this. We have The Void, which starts off this album, and it goes into Mark of the Blade. Now, the one thing that should be noted about Mark of the Blade is that that track is the shortest one on this affair. It's not even 3 minutes in length. I think a lot of people were worried whenever this single came out that the whole entire album was going to be like this, and it's not really quite like that. But The Void is one where the lyricism once again is a little bit shady on this, but it does have that sort of heavy exterior to it. People that want a heavy album out of Whitechapel will certainly be a little bit satisfied with this. I'm just wondering if they're going to be really satisfied with the quality of this, because Bring Me Home, which is track number 4, almost sounds like Whitechapel is kind of doing their best to enter into some forbidden realm, perhaps going into that Five-Finger Death Punch playbook. A lot of clean vocals on this to couple with some of that more aggressive tone that Whitechapel carries along with them, that sort of deathy, deathcore / metalcore philosophy that they have with them, or just death metal, whatever the hell you want to call them. Really, it's up to you at this point in time. I really don't give a shit. But this is a song that comes off as a bit cheesy, though, even though it has a lot of heart behind it and definitely has a decent message behind it. It can seem a bit cheesy to some, while others, this will certainly captivate and make them seem and feel like they've heard a brand new side of Whitechapel, something that they did not expect sort of came out of nowhere and blindsided them just a little bit. That statement just garnered fireworks from outside of my window. I know I'm great. So we move forward into Tremors and A Killing Industry, but oh wait, I just skipped right over Elitist Ones, and this is where things are a little wonky. There was definitely some rumors that there was going to be some tracks that talk about the metal community in itself, and I'm just going to put this out there once again. Whenever you decide to play something like this on a record, it almost universally comes off as a bit wonky. It comes off as a bit more like belly aching, as opposed to really making this grand statement. Maybe it's something that you just have to get off of your chest. Maybe it is something that pisses you off as an artist, but with this particular movement, it's one of the only ones where you hear a lot of this real, disillusion towards some of its own fans. You will hear that in some of the other, styles of heavy metal, some of the darker arts of heavy metal. If you remember perhaps Negative Megalomania, for example, from Forgotten Tomb, it was one that was directly, targeted the black metal community. But this is one that comes off just as a little bit wonky. It does not work very well, and Whitechapel is the type of band that may be bold enough to do something like this, but it's not going to be taken with that sort of, friendly, or that, yeah, you go get 'em boys attitude by a lot of members of the movement, of the genre. It's just the way that it is. It's going to be seen just as a little bit of crybabying or belly aching, and it's just the way it kind of is. A Killing Industry going into Tormented, which I think Tormented is pretty well done, going into Brotherhood, which Brotherhood is a fantastic 4-minute and 20-second long instrumental track that seems like it's trying to take a little bit of a cue from some technical death metal. In fact, you can see a little bit where this band could be kind of a simpler version of a tech death group. They have sort of the right chops on the musical level where they could pull something like that off. They almost use a simple is better approach whenever it comes to some of these ideas. A lot of layering in order to give it a little bit of depth, a little bit of balls, and then sort of the density of the way in which this is produced and the atmosphere that they really craft, which always has sort of like this very dark room philosophy to it, this very, if you imagine If you imagine a movie that has a serial killer with victim in chair, you kind of get that same philosophy. That's kind of what they're going for. And this song really captivates that mood, captivates that spirit. Even though the name is called Brotherhood, it probably has absolutely nothing to do with death and all that other stuff. It's just the way in which the overall atmosphere, the feel of the musical composition, the airy composition of this really delivers that good. And I really like this. I think this is a really nice side. In fact, it's kind of weird that I like probably the one song that has no lyrics the most on the album. The one that has no vocals I like the most on the album, just because it showcases something that this band is not completely terrible. You know, this band, it gets a lot of shit, but they're not completely terrible. They have some talent that's within there, and the talent exposes itself from time to time. And Dwell in the Shadows kind of does that same thing once again. In fact, the last portion of this disc, the last 4 songs, are stronger than the first 7 that come before it, to be perfectly blunt. This is a really strong portion of the disc. Dwell in the Shadows really follows up with Brotherhood, even though it seems like it's not going to. One of the big problems a lot of people will have with this disc is that some of the introductory ideas and some of the baseline verse ideas that you get from this group are going to sound very samey. There's not going to be a lot of difference, with the exception of maybe some pacing and speed. However, Dwell in the Shadows really is able to provide its own through its chorus and also through its solo. You know, once again, the musical side of this is a little bit more tight, a little bit more crisp, and the lyricism just sort of floats in subspace and doesn't feel like it accomplishes much. Venomous going into Decenium, which Decenium being a 6-minute long song gives the band the opportunity to really space out a little bit, air out a little bit, and overall the composition of this final cut, it's unique. It definitely boasts its own identity, but the one thing that it doesn't really do, at least not very well, is leave you with a big wow moment. You know, there's just something about this where they use the space and time in order to maybe try to do a little bit more musical storytelling as opposed to really trying to wow the audience. And it's a bold move, it's a risky move, especially on a last track, but the last track should always be a little something special. And this one, while it definitely has some of those same airs and some of those same ideas, just didn't quite pull the trigger, I think, far enough. Though I will say that by comparison to some of what you get on the first half of this disc, this is sterling. This is certainly well worth the wait. I don't know. Overall, this is a really strange album. Mark of the Blade is a very strange title for this disc because it does not cut with the sort of serial, destruction of, say, a saw blade. In fact, it reminds me a little bit more of a pocket knife that maybe as it goes further on down the playthrough, gets sharpened a little bit by some asshole while he's in shop class. This is not one that packs the wallop that I think many people were hoping that it would. Some are going to feel a little vindicated considering this does boast being better than Our Endless War, but that was not an accomplishment that was too difficult to do. It wasn't a Rubik's Cube that was too hard to solve. But this is an album that still showcases the band that is, at times, very much defeated by itself, by some of its old habits. Some of its old habits die hard with it completely and totally, and brings down the overall work that is perhaps potentially done on this disc, especially in its closing moments. This is a 78 out of 100. Overall, a decent listen, but not one that you're going to necessarily be getting the urge to listen to once again immediately after it's over. It's kind of difficult to go back to, but I want to know what you guys think about Mark of the Blade by Whitechapel. Let me know in the comments below. My name is coverkillernation, and that guy in the hat from, I don't know who that was, but I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.